welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air, where we meet the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home in Upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and today we're focusing our artist spotlight on writer, producer, actor, and filmmaker Adam Elliott. Aficionados of the Inwood Film Festival might remember his short comic film Adam Adamson, Licensed Realtor from last year's festival, and his documentary Harv from the 2018 festival, which he wrote and produced as tribute to his father, Harv Toback. He also did a roommate short at the very first Inwood Film Festival way back in 2015. True to form, he co-wrote Little Italy, Los Angeles, which was selected for the still-to-come 2020 Inwood Film Festival. We're going to talk about that and lots of other things, but not before I welcome you, Adam, to Inwood Artworks On Air.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is great.
Well, it's wonderful to have you.
Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here. And if
just a normal week, just a normal, everything's fine.
No.
We're not doing this during a pandemic. It's cool.
It's possibly not happening. Then again, it very possibly is.
Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. And if you are listening or wondering where here is, we are situated overlooking the calm waters of the Spuyten Duyvil from a lovely table of the Indian Road Cafe down here on 218th Street, Indian Road, the last cafe on the only road in Manhattan here. We are also in the middle as...
Well, that's right. It's the only road. There's no other road. It's just streets and avenues and ways and places. No roads.
Yeah. So at least, if anything, you get a little bit of trivia out of this particular episode.
It's the only road in Manhattan.
It is. But Adam mentioned, though, we are here in the middle of unprecedented times. It'd be possible to deny or fail to recognize that we are, in fact, recording in the middle of the novel coronavirus pandemic. Here and around the country, many businesses are closed, and millions of people have been directed to minimize their contact with one another. We are, in fact, doing that today. Even as we record this interview, we are being physically distant and yet social in our own way.
So social Adam, yet distant.
Indeed. A social distance social, if you will. So, Adam, how are you and yours doing this during this extraordinary and strange time?
I think just trying to stay creative and productive as best you can from the confines of your house. It's nice to go out once in a while, but they're saying to stay inside, obviously. I mean, everyone's kind of in the same boat, I try not to complain too much. I try to live in gratitude because I think it's really easy to not, to get into a kind of a dark kind of headspace during a time like this. So just to live in gratitude and be grateful for who you have in your life and reach out to your friends, FaceTime, I think it's a much needed pause. I like that the governor called it a pause. I know that it's like it stands for something, but I prefer that to shelter in place. I think he's doing a great job.
Yeah, it means
hashtag Cuomo, hashtag my next husband. I'm kind of getting all the women are getting a crush on Cuomo. I'm having a little bit of a man crush on Cuomo right now. So,
well, speaking of just seeing the world through a different way and how people are interpreting and language is a big deal. Artists see the world through a different lens that than perhaps what we affectionately call civilians do. As a creative artist, what are you you obviously you have that myriad of projects you're working on. What does the world look like right now from your point of view as a creative person? You're straddling not just your personal life but your professional life, and so how is that affecting? Obviously, aside from being positive, what does it look like from you right now?
I've always because I've never really. It took me a little while to be able to introduce myself as a writer to people because I always kind of lived under this assumption that in order to be a writer, you have to have been paid as a writer, and I've only been paid a couple of times for my writing work. What kind of cracked it for me is I think that the difference between writers and everyone else is I think writers see something, and if they see something that impacts them in a way that they just can't get out of their head, they have to make it part of something. You see something on the subway and it just jiggles something in your mind, and then you just, I got to write this down. I got to make this part of something. And I think other people can just see that thing and then just never do anything with it. So I think that's the difference. So, right now it's hard for me because, a lot of, especially if you're a writer, you obtain a lot of your inspiration from obviously what you're observing, outside of yourself. And so now we're kind of forced to just kind of look completely within. And so it becomes this sort of introspective process more than what can I kind of observe from outside of myself, So that's kind of the challenge I'm having right now, is not being able to, it's that not having that constant, what's it called? That constant sensory, stimulus. You know what I mean? It's just it's harder to get that inspiration. So
Sure, but yet you still remain active and keep putting your work out there. I mean, you're very active on social media, and a lot of your work actually offers some commentary on social media. I think Adam Adamson, for example, does that. Your promo for Adam Adamson does that, in the last 2 weeks, we as a country and as a world have relied on social media in a very real way, perhaps more than in their time. So what are your thoughts about that? I actually would be glad for, people are trying to change their business models and saying, well, we're going to live stream things. We're going to change our business model. I'm really a filmmaker, but I'm going to take these into webisodes now. And do you think people are trying to pivot too fast right now? Or do you feel that the medium is something that is valid to invest in, and saying, this is a way people can communicate. So as artists, we have to figure out, we don't exist in a vacuum, right? Without an audience, we have to reach somebody. So do you feel like social media is that step, other than communication, is the way to bring connectivity through entertainment?
Yeah, I mean, especially right now, where you don't have the person-to-person contact, I guess you do need to rely on social. I have chosen to, I work in real estate. That's, that's just, what I do for paying the bills. But I made the conscious decision to use that in my creative life too. And so I made Adam Adamson it was a fake promotional video for this kind of like alter ego for myself, who's like totally mentally disturbed. I kind of bring that also into like, on Instagram, I put out these memes that are just, anyone who looks at it that's like, trying to take me seriously probably would, not enjoy those. But I've gotten clients from those memes. So I mean, like, I don't really care what I put out anymore in terms of the content. I think that, a lot of my colleagues, all the social they do is like, look at this beautiful photo of this perfect apartment. I'm like, this is boring. You know what I mean? Like, I want to inject a little bit of my personality and my weirdness into everything I do on, social media, and also any of the film and theater stuff that I do, without being apologetic about it. Because I think people are scared of like how they're going to be perceived, and that stops them from being creative. And I don't like to live in that space.
So how close is Adam Adamson like dealing with real New York real estate?
I mean, I've never been a homeless realtor. I've never lived in any of my empty apartments. I've taken naps in some of my empty apartments. If there's like an open house and nobody's showing up, I've definitely found myself like laying on the floor.
If there's shades, pull them down.
It's not totally dissimilar to some of my experiences, yeah.
Going back a film, your dad,
Mm-hmm.
Harv Tobak, was one of the original Mad Men.
Yeah.
He also had a very much an artistic side. I think, I know you a little bit as well, so it's inspired you to write and produce that documentary on your dad. Was your dad a real funny guy? Because you're a funny guy.
He was. He was hilarious. It's hard to explain. It's funny because, he was also a real talker. Like, we couldn't ever get him to just, like, he would tell a story that would just go on and on and on. And we'd have to, like, tell him, like, listen, it's enough already. Okay, it's enough. But then he'd have these moments where he was straight out of, like, vaudeville. He was born 3 months before the 1929 stock market crash, of course, that led to the Great Depression. So he had a lot of stories that were on paper really quite devastating, but when he'd tell them, you'd always end up laughing. And I think that a big part of his humor came out of his, being a child during that time. I think he needed to find the humor in it, and I think that kind of stayed with him for the rest of his life. So I definitely feel like I got some of my humor from him, and he casts a wide shadow. I have big shoes to fill someday. I don't think I'll ever be able to, but he was a great man, great inspiration. I'm the luckiest son ever. And I did the film so that really for the purposes, it was really simple for me. I just wanted to have like a 10-minute video to show people, to just be able to introduce Harv to people after he was gone. And that's what the film does. And we played it at his memorial, and people, it's a cheap little film that we did that doesn't really matter that it was made on nothing. Like, people still respond well to it, so we like it.
Well, it's a well-made film, and obviously there's a lot of passion behind it. And for those of you who haven't seen Harv, it's won numerous film festivals. It's so personal, which makes it, I think, universal. Yeah,
it's a very personal piece, and yeah, you can watch it on harvtobackfund.org. It's for free on the site.
Your newest film, Little Italy, Los Angeles, is part of a series. You've co-wrote that with Adriano Valentini, titled, what is the Italian version?
I can't even pronounce it. Unu Taglio, something. Adriano's going to hate me for this. No, I had another title for it, but he really wanted this title, so we went with that. It's just about, Little Italy, Los Angeles is a series about a community that's undergoing a lot of change, a lot of gentrification, and it kind of centers around this one old Italian barber who's a little bit opposed to a lot of the changes that are happening in his neighborhood. In order to drive up business for his failing barbershop, he introduces some new he offers some new services, and one of them is ball shaving, and that's the episode that we were going to show at the film festival this year. So unfortunately, Inwood has to wait, I guess, a few more months to watch me get my balls shaved on camera. It's not graphic. It's covered. It's PG-13, highly PG-13.
Well, if that wasn't a film teaser, I don't know what was. Can I just say, where did the idea for that come from?
So I was getting a haircut from a barber that my barber was out of town, and I probably had a date that night, and I needed to get a haircut, So I went to a barber that I didn't know, and we were having a nice conversation, and I just thought to myself, I was getting this, because I'm messed up in the head, I have these like weird fleeting thoughts sometimes where I'll be in an interaction with another human, and I'll think to myself, what's the one thing I could say right now to get this person to never want to have anything to do with me ever again? I don't know why I think that, but I just do. Sometimes I just think it. And I was getting a haircut, and I thought, I bet if I asked him to shave my balls, he'd want me to leave. He'd want me to leave, and he probably wouldn't even let me pay. He'd probably just kick me out, finish the haircut, like mid-haircut. And so I had that idea, and I was like, oh, that could be a funny sketch. So I wrote it as a sketch for UCB. I showed it to, Adriano before we even wrote the series, and he said it'd be funnier probably if instead of you asking for that the barber offered that as a service. And so it was really his idea to kind of flip that around. And so we wrote the episode and then made it part of something bigger.
I think it's just an amazing parallel to point out that you were going on a first date, and so you went to choose to have a first date with a barber you've never had before.
Right.
Cutting your hair with a messed up head.
Yeah.
There's like layers upon layers in that.
And now I have no hair, so now I cut my own hair because I'm going bald. So I just decided to just shave it off.
Well, I think that's
this is my first interview with a shaved head, so I'm feeling good.
Well, thank you for sharing the aerodynamics of your skull with us. It's really wonderful.
No one can tell over the radio.
This is true.
This is radio or podcast, whatever. It's fine.
It's Inwood Artworks on air. We're definitely looking forward to seeing it at the Inwood Film Festival whenever it shall happen again, and it will happen again. Yeah. We have faith, and we're staying positive about that. Speaking of projects, so what is your next project?
Well, I've got A Best Man, which, is part of the Inwood Artworks Filmmaker Fund Award. So I shot that last January. We're in post-production now. Obviously, some things have been delayed with COVID-19, but, it's... I can sing on this,
right? You can
right?
totally
okay,
sing
cool,
on it.
Cool.
Any other variations, like My Corona, perhaps?
My Corona.
There you go.
There's a lot of nice parodies out there. #parody.
Weird Al's like sitting at home with like...
He's. I think he's done. I think he's not gonna... He did a parody of My Sharona.
He did.
I can't remember what it was.
My Bologna.
My Bologna, that's
right?
I think maybe, yeah.
I think it was Bologna, bologna.
I think that was on Bad Hair Day. I can't remember. Yeah, so we're in post production on that. I've got my play First and Last that I've been submitting out to various theater companies around the country. Theater companies that I hope are going to be able to come back stronger after this, and I hope that the support of their local communities will keep those smaller theaters going. So I'm submitting to those, and I'm submitting other scripts and this and that, and, always trying to stay active.
Is there a place where listeners can go to find about everything that is all Adam Elliott?
Yeah, just go to c-productions.com, and I've just completely, I've put all of my stuff on there for free, so you can watch all my crazy, weird stuff, c-productions.com.
Well, Adam, you're anything but C-. So
thank you.
Thank you for being here today. Listeners, will have those links up for you on the Inwood Artworks On Air website, so stay tuned for that. I want to thank Adam Elliott for joining us here on this Artist Spotlight edition of Inwood Artworks On Air, where we showcase the musicians, filmmakers, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes that make their home in Inwood and its surrounding community. Be sure to follow us at Inwood Artworks and InwoodArtworks.NYC on the web to keep up with all that we do, including the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Al Fresco, pop-up art galleries, live performances, and so much more. And stay tuned for more editions of Artist Spotlight. Thanks again to the fine folks at Indian Road Cafe for hosting us. For Inwood Artworks On Air, this is Aaron Sims.